But I was just wondering what the disposition of the council, and just sort of, bringing something up here is not necessarily the way you want to change these things, but that would be one that I might want to think about, maybe going back and having the planning commission just consider that. I'll defer to your professional judgment on that, but I find those to be sometimes they just seem out of place.
Yeah, if staff could comment on that.
Yeah.
Basically, our development guide, it's a set of guidelines for permanent signs,
Okay.
not temporary signs. We just went ahead and put the inflatable guy in there just as sort of an example because we had a lot of people requesting that. But this is,
Okay.
these would be the guidelines that the staff, and say a developer comes with a master sign plan. Well, then they're going to look at this guide and go, these are the type of signs that they're looking for: materials, color, size, location, on a building
Okay.
that we're going to look at when we approve a design plan. So those kinds of temporary signs, we really don't have design guidelines for temporary signs.
see
They're
those,
usually
yeah.
approved under a temporary use permit
Right.
for a special event, a grand opening, that kind of thing. That is not the purpose of the development guide.
I
So that's
understand.
why you don't, that's
Okay.
why we didn't, we could certainly
Oh, no.
add a lot of pages of that, but it
fine.
wouldn't be really serving its purpose.
No, thank you for the clarification.
welcome.
Although some of those signs look like they're starting to grow roots on Placerville Drive. They've been out there a little bit more than temporary, but that's a discussion for a
Well,
different day.
right, and we need to talk about
Yeah,
that.
but that's a
I really do
discussion,
want to have a
right.
discussion about
No,
signs.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a bigger issue that we're going to
And
be
we've talked
dealing
about it. It was,
Yeah.
and how we go about enforcing.
with. Okay.
you
Right,
know.
and staff understands that. The development guide, again, it's not an enforcement tool.
I understand that, so.
And
but I
so
really
that's
would like to
definitely
come
a
back.
full discussion we can have, but it's kind of separate from
Right.
the development
Exactly, I
guide.
understand.
Okay, cool.
That's fine.
Anything else? Any other questions? Anything? Okay.
Just quick question. Pierre, help me understand the shall versus should. Help me understand that.
Yeah, that, I believe that was something that came out during the original workshop that we had on April the 4th, and there were some planning commissioners that felt that there was a need for a little bit more flexibility and not be so rigid, and so
Okay.
it said you shall have this type of sign. I think they wanted it changed to should. Now,
I do remember that now.
That's certainly something that if the council so desires, you can change, but I think, we can see how it works. It's not to say that when staff reviews this, we can certainly deny something that's proposed because it deviates too
Right,
strongly from what
right.
the city is trying to achieve in terms of a look, a style, a character, and they can always appeal. Then that appeal would then go from to the city council.
But it would give staff some discretion for projects, too.
Right.
Yeah,
Staff
which
would make
makes
that
sense.
recommendation initially to the planning commission. Then the planning commission would have, it would be the final say unless that decision were appealed at the
Oh,
council.
that makes, I do remember that discussion now. And one other question, Pierre, and I know, thank you for reminding us that this is not an enforcement tool. That was a helpful reminder. But under A1, it says the adjacent landscaped area will also be consistently maintained. And my question is, or what? Because I know a lot of projects go in and they have nice landscaping, and then that's the last we see of the landscaping. So just what is the thought there? Is this just a reminder to the developer that they are expected to maintain it?
Correct.
Okay. all right.
Yeah, it's just a reminder.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, typically what the city sees is whenever we approve a development project under a site plan review and there's landscaping involved, typically a draft landscaping plan is submitted and then
Right.
approved, then the developer or the property owner is required to enter into what's called a landscape
maintenance.
maintenance agreement with the city.
Okay,
So they
that's
are
right.
required then to maintain and keep that landscaping as was originally approved in perpetuity.
Okay. Okay, great. And so enforcement is a whole different issue. All right, thank you, Pierre.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? No, sir. Okay. Would the public like to comment on signs?
Kathy Lishman, and I wouldn't miss an opportunity.
I knew you were going to be here for this one.
So I know this is for the development guide, and the one sign it showed on page 8, a gooseneck sign at the Buttercup, I think. I want to make sure that all gooseneck signs have to go down. And then I wanted to ask about lighting on monument signs. I think we kind of have a policy, but I'm not sure about uplighting is not allowed. But I wanted to see if that was a part, if lighting was a part of this. And on monument signs, if the lighting goes down. Then I liked the picture on page 3 that showed a clear sidewalk. Page 3 of this guide, that you can walk down the sidewalk without a lot of obstructions. And then, since we're talking about downtown, this is kind of a separate topic, but it is downtown. And it has to do with the banners downtown. And I looked into it because there was some off-site advertising for an event, for an activity, for a very worthy nonprofit on the back of all of those beautiful signs, the beautiful banners. A few years ago, Stanley Steamer came up with, they were on the back of all of the banners.
remember that.
And John made sure that that was removed. But I heard we don't have any say about that. But to me, it detracts from the beautiful banners. And if they need some funding for it, it would be a good idea to raise some funding. And I think it's really off-site signage for something that isn't even taking place in Placerville. Not that I think anything should be on the back of it. I think those banners are so beautiful, and I think it's very distracting.
That's what I think. It shouldn't be anything.
And they all had the same thing, but then they were colored different ways. So whatever it was, I felt was distracting from the banners this year. And I know this isn't it, but what to do about the sign enforcement which pertains to existing development? If we're asking people to follow these guidelines and they look around and they see that other people aren't, it's kind of difficult to enforce it. I would like to see, and I've said this before, if it's possible, for the council to make sure to have, if business license bills go out to people, to have a little summary of what the sign ordinance says. And I hope that someday the council will decide to enforce the sign ordinance that is excellent, and I'd be happy to help.
Thank you, Kathy. Anyone else wish to comment on this? Okay, let's bring it back up here. Thank you for the comments, by the way. Was there anything in there we needed to address? I don't think so. I mean, it's all good stuff.
I don't think so.
I agree with you. It's all very good stuff. There's a lot of things.
As staff has pointed out,
Just
these
in-
are guidelines.
Okay, I have one question. Just
Go
in
right
case
ahead.
we haven't covered everything, if something should pop up later,
We almost certainly haven't.
can it be added
Well, of course
to
it can.
this? Just in case.
We can do anything we want. We are all powerful. Anyway, okay.
Mr. Mayor, staff
Yes.
could add one
Yes.
comment to one of the items that Ms. Lishman did talk about, and that was the uplighting.
Yes.
And
Oh, yes.
the
Thank
city
you.
does
That was what I was
prescribe
gonna ask
to
about.
the dark skies, and so as part of our design guidelines, we don't allow, lights to sign up into the sky. And so during any of our site plan
Really?
reviews, we look at appropriate downloading of lighting and
Yeah.
screening of the lighting and
Yeah.
that
Okay.
sort of thing. So, to answer that question.
I know I'm probably in a minority here. I actually kind of, there's a part of me that sort of likes a little uplighting. I think that it has a nice fresh look about it, and it's just, I know it's all personal preferences, and people like things and don't like things, and I know what the idea of lighting up the sky and all that is about, but I'm just saying, there's just some applications for uplighting that I think are kind of cool and can look kind of neat, But anyway, my own personal preference. Don't worry, folks, not gonna do uplighting anytime soon. Okay,
Question for staff.
yes.
Pierre, you mentioned the dark sky, and I seem to remember we adopted that years ago. We became a dark
Yes.
sky. So your department still follows those guidelines?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so and that would address Kathy's concern about, I had downward illuminating goosenecks. We all assume a gooseneck is going to do what we think it's going to do, but John might put them on backwards, and they would shine up. So, and he would feel completely wonderful about it, and
And
we
they'd
would be
fill up
going.
with water when it rained.
No, but so, we have the dark sky, so we're good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is it allowed for landscaping? Because it seems like I've seen uplighting on.
Yeah, they usually, yeah, that's
landscaping.
actually kind of where you
And
see it
trees,
more in
yeah,
the
it's
gardens,
beautiful
or
in trees,
What
yeah.
do they call it, washes and stuff like
Yeah.
that, yeah. so-
Wall washes.
Wall washes and stuff, okay. All right, well, thank you very much for all of that, that was very interesting. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve item 12.2.
I will s-
Second? Oh, go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
I'm going to second
Pardon
that
me.
one.
Pardon me.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we need to roll call this because we're adding some, no, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good, thank you very much for that, that was cool.
That's the shortest sign discussion I think I've ever
Oh,
been
there'll
in
be
my
Stay
plenty
life.
tuned.
more.
Wait
there'll
till-
be-
I affected a package about that
There will be
thick.
plenty more time
Well,
to
wait till the
argue
next
over
one.
sign.
Enforcement.
Thank you for
Okay.
Pierre for bringing those corrections through the process.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Ooh, this is why my agenda packet was so thick.
That's right.
There it
It was
is. I
deceiving.
thought it was a science, but
No, it wasn't.
It was
Let me
deceiving.
go back here. I like to read it off of the agenda. Excuse me, please. Sorry, I've lost my place. Review and comment on the draft Parks and Recreation Master Plan update. Mr. Yule.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Council. It's staff's intent to receive city council input on the attached City of Placerville Parks and Recreation Draft Master Plan update. This update will be used to create mandated fees study for both park development fees and Quimby Act land dedications. A final draft of the master plan update and the associated fee study, including park development fee recommendations, will be brought before the city council for final approval in December. Staff has worked closely with Recreation and Parks Commission and Foothill Associates and the community at large. The draft master plan clearly articulates the standards and guidelines that support the recommendations for both new and existing park facilities. The updated plan has been reviewed by the City of Placerville Planning Commission, and it has been determined that the revised master plan is consistent with the city's general plan. Kate Kirsch is in the audience tonight from Foothill Associates, and she will provide an overview of the update and address any questions you may have regarding the update. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kate. Welcome back, Kate.
Great, thank you, Steve. Can everybody hear me all right? Yes, good. Good evening, Mayor Clarici and council members and staff. Thank you for having me here this evening. As Steve mentioned, I'm going to try to just give you an overview of this update process because I'm sure each of you have read every page of that plan and digested it, right? Okay.
Word for word.
Word for word, okay. This is simply a master plan update. It's a limited update. It's not a rewriting of the entire master plan. You may recall the joint session we had, I think, back in, maybe it was April, when we talked about the need to do this update as preparation for taking a look at your impact fee and potential Quimby ordinance for parks related to new development. So this particular update basically is looking at current conditions and anticipated future demand. It does include the city of Placerville as well as the surrounding communities that utilize Placerville resources that were included in the last full master plan that was prepared. There are a handful of specific sections that are listed up there that were revised, and those specific revisions were done in order to support the impact fee and Quimby studies, which will be the next step of this process. We did update the inventory. There were a few little odds and ends. Duffy Park is open now. It wasn't at the time. There are a few little corrections to some of the county facilities and mileage that have changed slightly since the 2009 plan, but very minor, nothing major. We did take a look at all the programs and updated the participation numbers for the 2014 to 2016, that 3-year period. And basically found a few projects or programs have dropped off, a few new ones have been added in response to demand, but there continues to be a very strong demand across all the age groups and across all the programming areas. The city staff is doing a great job keeping the community involved and engaged in really great recreation activities. We also took a look at some of the demographics and tried to get a better handle on what the community might look like moving forward. It was interesting to see there was actually a slight dip in population in the overall plan area due to the economic recession. The area has recovered from that. SACOG, which is, as you know, is our regional Council of Governments regional planning entity. By 2032, they're expecting about a 10% population increase for the entire plan area, but about a 17% within the city of Placerville. So that points to the desirability of living in an area where there are more services, including parks, maybe closer access to schools, shopping, and other advantages. We did see that there's a bit of change in the age group distribution following the trend that we've all been hearing about for a long, long time, declining number of people in the under 20 and increasing number of people in the 50-year and older. But that certainly doesn't mean that any of those segments are disappearing. They all continue to exist within our plan area, and they all continue to need services and programs. See, we did see that there was a slight decline in home ownership since the plan was done. And again, I think that's an artifact of the economic time. A lot of people perhaps lost homes or moved away. The only reason that's really significant or something to think about in terms of park planning is because it tends to suggest there's a possibility that people don't have as much of a vested interest if they're not actually living in the community. But it's a very minor decline. We also added a section on land use and growth to this update significantly because obviously if this is the underpinnings for looking at what kind of a development impact fee might be implemented, you want to ask yourself, what kind of growth might we be expecting in this community in the future? And essentially, these bullets speak to the general plan housing element. In 2014 identified that Placerville had a share of the regional housing needs that needed to be met, also looked at where might some of these units go, and through a variety of rezoning and vacant land inventory, there's really adequate space to potentially add about 3,200 new people to the community if all of those units were to build out. And this is a combination of single family and multifamily. So that comes from roughly around about 1,200 units and an average number of people per housing unit, about 2.5 people. So there is the potential for growth, and therefore it's important to have an impact fee in place so that you can capture income to meet the park demand that these new people are bringing to your community.
Quick question, Kate, on that last slide?
Yeah.
You have current projects listed of 175,000 square feet of commercial development. What is that project?
It's several of them, and I don't, Pierre, if you can speak to
Placerville?
It's a possibility or it's current?
Am I missing something?
These are numbers from Andrew.
Okay.
Pending projects. I can certainly research that, but I don't know off the top of my head what they are.
So it's a projection
It's a
on,
projection. I
it's a
believe.
so it's
projection
a-
on vacant land probably that
It's
could be used.
175, 850 square feet of commercial development that's under consideration at this point. It doesn't necessarily mean they're a done
Is that
deal.
the hotel?
Well, that's not even close to 100.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at that. It's my understanding that that is a projection based on, is that a 20-year planning time horizon that
Yep.
we were looking at? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what we're expecting to happen over the next 20 years.
Okay, it says current projects, that's a
It's
misnomer.
not current projects.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We did also, even though this was just a limited update, we did want to go back out to the community and get some more public input to see if there are any new needs or new concerns that have arisen since the 2009 plan was inked. We had another open house in April, and actually the recommendations that we heard were pretty much consistent with what we heard in 2009. Some of the same problems are still there, some of the same needs and demands are there, but we did incorporate specific recommendations into the master plan to reflect that input. One of the key parts of this update is looking at what we call a level of service, or an LOS. And that LOS is very important because it sort of describes what the current quality of the park and recreation experience is in your community. And that becomes a benchmark, which is then used to establish what kind of fee should be charged for new people coming into the community. Because you can't ask people coming in to basically fund something more than is currently being provided unless you have deep pockets somewhere and you have some way of raising that level of service, which I suspect is not the case. So anyway, this is a very important kind of piece of the analysis. So we did add to the level of service analysis that was done in 2009 a standard for trails. About 0.55 miles per 1,000 people of trail are currently in the city, and that was so that if you do decide to have a impact fee component to help fund new trails, you have some basis to go off of. You currently have an acreage standard of 5 acres per 1,000, which you are meeting, and presumably that would continue to be brought forward as an impact fee is put in place. We did note that El Dorado County unfortunately continues to be struggling with meeting its obligation and desire to provide neighborhood parks. We added some additional facility standards for some kind of more popular facilities that were a little bit less popular in 2009, specifically the dog park and a bike pump track. We had input on both of those at the community meeting. And then we took away the standard for a football field because really the high school is really meeting that need, and there's no need to duplicate a facility that's already being provided. And then needs continue for some of the other facilities, as you know, listed there: tennis courts, sport courts, fields, gymnasium, community center space, and group picnic areas. The master plan update has specific recommendations for individual parks. It includes ADA recommendations for Benham Rotary, Lions, Goldbug, and Lumsden, some capital maintenance / repair projects at Lions, Goldbug, and Lumsden, new playground equipment at Orchard Hill, shade structure at Duffy, and then we also pulled out of the recommendations things that have been completed since the plan was last done. Luckily, yes, some things did actually get completed, and you're making progress on some of the things that were envisioned a while back. From those recommendations, we took a look at what would it cost to implement all of those items. It comes up to about $3.5 million in facility improvements over a 10-year capital period, and that is a number that's adjusted for inflation. The operating cost over that period is about $23.9, also adjusted for inflation. And so you can do the math. It's pretty easy to see that you need basically additional revenues targeted for facility improvements of about $350,000 per year for 10 years to meet that program. And I do want to point out that the purpose of the impact fee is not specifically to come up with that $350,000 a year. It is a fee that's being assessed in order to add new capacity to your system in order to meet the demands of new population. So you want to kind of keep clear about its limited use. The $350,000 is about a 15% increase over your current revenue sources, which means you really are going to have to look at some potential new revenue sources to come up with those additional monies, anywhere from grants to planned giving, public-private partnerships, possibly adding an inflation factor to your LLADs, your lighting, landscape assessment districts, and various other items. We did get comments, as Steve mentioned earlier. We did go to the Recreation and Parks Commission back in August last month. They had us include some additional trail mileage, the Weber Creek to the Forney Road piece, because it was just on the verge of being done. It is now, I think, just about completed. They wanted to have us add potential for lighting along certain segments of the trail, and then just some minor odds and ends corrections. I think we had horseshoes listed somewhere where you didn't have horseshoes, so we took that out. And then we also went to the Planning Commission meeting earlier this month, and we got comments about the capital program envisioned. The various level of improvements is just too expensive, and that it should not drive impact fees. And I think the individual who made that, it was a written comment received, just didn't understand that an impact fee is not meant to fund those kinds of things. So it's really kind of a non-issue. Recommendations to make sure that volunteers are used where possible, which is already included in the plan. A few other items up there. ADA needs to be a priority, and you'll see in the capital plan that most of those ADA requirements are targeted for the first 3 to 4 years to get implemented. So essentially, the comments that we received are things that are already actually in the plan. So really no changes from the Planning Commission meeting. The next steps at this point, there will be any comments we received this evening that need to be incorporated into the plan will be done hopefully by October 3rd, which is next week from today. And then there will be a draft park impact fee and Quimby fee report prepared by Blair Oss, who's a subconsultant working with me. He will be presenting that in a joint meeting to the Recreation Commission and Planning Commission, I believe I have November 7th up there. And the idea behind having both those commissions jointly hear the item and discuss it was so that there could be some kind of back and forth between the two bodies, because it really does, it impacts parks and it impacts planning pretty significantly. So it'd be more useful to have that dialogue all in one room. And then hopefully back here to you, to the City Council, with any comments or changes they have for your December meeting, at which point, depending on how it goes, you may choose to adopt the fee studies and the master plan update or move it on to another meeting. So that's that. Do you have any questions or anything that I can address for you this evening?
Are there any questions or comments out there?
Not right.
Well,
Not at
I
this
just
time.
want to say that I did really try to read a lot of this. I really did. And I mean, it was interesting to me. Things that, and I started thinking about it and I thought, okay, this is our job right now. We're trying to project, 10 years, and it's kind of hard. For instance, where you were talking about suggesting at a future to have a swimming pool, east of here. And in a different spot. I mean, we've got one swimming pool now, but suggesting another one, and it's like, oh my gosh, what it took to get that one, So, but those are all things, we need to think about as, we're here in the future and how we're going to save the money and, all that sort of thing. So it was very, very interesting to read all those things, I thought.
Well, thank you for taking the time to read it.
Mr. Mayor, that's a perfect segue into my comments, so thank you, Patty, for that. Thank you again, Kate, for your presentation tonight, for being here with us. So yes, on page 11, where you talk about the city, number 9, the city shall, within fiscal limitations, develop another baseball field and a park that includes a swimming pool on the east side of the city. My question was, is that realistic? I mean, do we want that in the plan? Might it be better to say that that within fiscal limitations that we improve and or expand our current aquatic facility? Is that a more realistic application? Because we're having a hard time finding the resources to improve and maintain what we have.
Sure, certainly. I think one of the challenges at your existing pool is how do you increase capacity there,
Right.
Given the level of use and the time of year.
More staff.
The point of mentioning this in the master plan, I think, is to underscore how well used the existing
True.
pool is. There is some capacity to expand the length of time that people can use that pool if there were to be an investment in some kind of a cover or something like that on the pool, which is not inexpensive. But that doesn't give you additional capacity for the summer months when you have the high usage.
Right.
So we could certainly modify that language to underscore the difficulty of potentially having another pool at
Another
some other
facility. I mean,
location.
we do have the park adjacent to it, so I don't know whether it could be expanded into the park, but just the thought of improving and expanding our current facility.
Well, but then it goes back to, we're also counting on the county for help, so is that in is that in part of the plan, that you're still, or by then, will they have their own facility? So.
And I know it's
So-
not set in stone. It's, you know.
And
Sure,
I
sure.
realize, but that's something to consider, because if they were to build their own facility, we wouldn't have the impact maybe that we do now
Well,
from,
one of the things I should mention is that El Dorado County is also undergoing a very similar process that you're undergoing right now.
correct.
They are developing an impact fee for the unincorporated parts of the county, which to date they have not had. How they implement that and what kinds of facilities they will target to spend those monies on, they're in the situation where, because there is quite a bit of unmet demand and unmet need, pretty much anything they spend that money on is going to increase capacity. The county, per their general plan, focuses on regional parks in a way that most of the CSDs in the city don't so much, but it also focuses on partnering with the CSDs in the city on community parks, and then providing neighborhood parks in the unincorporated parts of the county. So that whole conversation about who would pay for whatever kinds of improvements are going to happen is somewhat down the road after these fees get put in place. And I think in some ways these things in the Master Plan act as kind of placeholders to remind people that this is a need and we need to have that conversation when we get further down the road. So.
That makes sense.
Okay,
Mayor,
that makes
can
sense.
I
Yes.
just comment quickly on that particular item that Councilmember Thomas brought up? Is actually a policy in our general plan document, which would require us amending our general plan, which is a much more difficult process actually than this
Right.
is. Looking at Pierre, that would be following him. So
No.
yes, that policy is within our general plan. These are policies that
Oh, I
are
see.
copied into this document from our
From the
general
general
plan.
Oh, okay.
But in our general plan, it already talks about the possibility of expanding or improving our current facility?
Well,
Or
this
no?
policy is the same thing.
Okay.
It's word for word from
Got
our
it.
general plan.
So we'll just leave it
So in other
alone.
words, we would have to amend our general plan
Got
to change this one, which is
Right, so
much
No.
more
the,
difficult
the,
process.
Didn't want to give Pierre heart failure.
the place, the location, the space that the specific item you were pointing to on page 11 is from the general plan.
Okay.
But other parts in the document, we do talk about the need for other facilities. And that's where the idea that if you would do want additional aquatic capacity,
Got
whatever
it.
that looks like, whether it
Okay.
is a separate pool or an expanded at your existing pool, where your comments could be reflected.
Okay, great. Okay, Mayor, a couple other questions. On page 25, under 3.6, we talk about recreation programs, and under the last sentence of the first paragraph, it talks about the Hangtown Christmas Parade is co-sponsored by the city with the Mountain Democrat. My recommendation would be just to cross that out, just and end the sentence, co-sponsored by the city, because sponsors change, as it did this year.
Sure.
And
I've
so-
got that marked in mine too.
Yeah. So,
right.
so just co-sponsored by the city and then leave it at that. That's my recommendation on that.
Alrighty.
And on page 29, similar comments. The third paragraph, it talks about the Placerville Downtown Association and the different events are listed. It says these include the Placerville Art Walk, the Bell Tower Breakfast. I don't even know what that is.
What is the bell tower breakfast?
I
please?
had that marked too, and I think that.
It's our
might-
public works
supposed-
guys.
What's that?
I was wondering if that's supposed to be Brewfest rather than
That's
breakfast.
what I was wondering.
Do we know?
That's it.
Totally different.
Little bit different, but
Bell
that's
Tower
my
Breakfast
guess.
sounds
I-
good, but
had
I didn't know what that
marked too.
I
was.
don't,
So just to give you some background,
Unless
we
you-
started with obviously the 2009 document, and then made what changes we knew about and ran it through staff, and I think there's
That's
probably a
fine.
few things got caught, so.
We've never had a bell tower
Yeah, maybe,
breakfast.
yeah, well, we don't know what the Bell Tower Breakfast is, so might cross that out.
I have drunk beer
Brewfest.
at breakfast. but-
And
I
it
will
might
make
be
that
important
change.
to list our, we can add the Brewfest instead of breakfast, Oktoberfest, but then certainly the Festival of Lights, which is probably one of our most beloved events downtown. So I would like to see that added to the list
You
of
bet.
events, and that doesn't change.
Okay.
And let's see, I think that was it. But otherwise, it was interesting reading, and appreciate all your work on this.
Thank you, thank you.
That was very good, very good. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions, comments, thought processes? Okay. Would the public like to comment on this item? I did say the, it was singular. A public, the public. Would the public?
The remaining?
You have a lot of responsibility here. You
Your
speak
last-
for everybody.
Okay. Sue Rodman, resident of Placerville, user of our planned, our parks and recreation facilities. The one thing that I see as a fatal flaw here is there is no consideration of how we keep these maintained. It's useless to build new stuff if we can't maintain it. Until our current parks really sparkle and provide what they're supposed to provide, and we don't have parking lots that are falling apart, and we don't have sidewalks that are falling apart, and we do meet our ADAs, it's sort of useless to start talking about putting in another swimming pool when we can't keep the one open we have without begging on bended knees for the county to provide us some money to keep it open through August when it's terribly hot and everybody wants to use it. So those are my concerns, and I don't know if this is the appropriate place to be addressed or not, but somewhere we need to realize that nothing gets done with deferred maintenance. Deferred means done. And we've done too much deferred maintenance for years and years and years. Our sewer system shows it, our roads show it, our water system shows it, our parks show it. And so my concern with this is somewhere we need to put in these plans a method to maintain what we have before we go building new dog parks. If you look along the El Dorado Trail at how well people do not pick up after their dogs now, and think about if you make a dog park, it probably won't get any better, and who's going to pick up after the dogs in that facility? We really have got to maintain what we have before we add to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Okay. Any other comments, questions?
On page 57, maintenance is addressed under operations. Just as notes, we certainly agree with you, Sue. Your comments are well taken. I guess thought from Steve or Kate on the idea of a mechanism for maintenance.
Well, I have a
Where that would
thought
be.
process about the kind of big picture on that, and that is, yes, the maintenance of things is very serious and needs to be dealt with, and you're absolutely right. On the other hand, you cannot stop planning for the future, and so you always have to be aware of what's going on, and that might mean talking about things that you may or may not be building anytime soon, but it still has to be thought about. The population will get bigger, the demands will increase, and who knows, maybe someday money will come from somewhere that we'll be able to use to do these things. So the planning is important. I think to speak to your concern is you don't spend all your time worrying about stuff you're not going to build at the expense of not talking about maintenance. And we're trying to sort of change the dialogue on that there. Would you have anything to
But
add?
John, it's
Yeah.
all spelled out, everything she talked about,
Right.
the maintenance, I mean, for.
Well, but even then, I mean, we could spell it out, but if we don't have any money to do it.
No, I
we
know,
don't-
but she was suggesting that it be put
Yeah.
in here. It is in
Oh,
here.
yes.
So I guess I would
Yeah.
just add that couple things.
Yeah.
If you look in detail at the various capital projects, a number of them actually are deferred maintenance projects. There's relatively little kind of new facility that's being added. There's certainly no new parks being specifically built. The other thing is, you do have the two lighting landscape assessment districts. And, there is a section on financing at the end of this that talks about various mechanisms that are possible for a governmental jurisdiction to implement to raise funds that can be used for maintenance. But those, of course, are at the will of the people, voters. So at this point, we discuss what those are, but it's up to you as the decision makers and the community decide whether they want to encumber themselves with anything, a special assessment or in a district or something. So.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Kate, for your hard work on this. It's always a pleasure working with your firm. And the direction that you've given us this evening is to looking to the future, and the best, using the crystal ball method as best we can as to where we'll be with the county and the city's population growth and the state of the economy and home ownership, et cetera. And it'll be interesting. It's always interesting when we look back and see how well we did. And I'm sure future councils will be doing the same thing with what we're working on at the moment. One of the ways that I approached this report was to focus on just everything that Kate has outlined in the report that gives the condition of our current park system.
Right.
And your comments, my colleagues' comments, and Kate's comments this evening regarding having a focus to future needs so that we're prepared if a project comes forward that's going to build 100 homes or donate land, et cetera. So we'll know what to do appropriately. One phase of that. The other big phase of this is the $3.5 million in, I consider most all of it deferred maintenance. Being fairly active out at Goldbug and having just spent some time down at Lions Park during a big event and seeing the impact that the current number of users put on our facilities in the state that we have with staff, as to, for the day-to-day operations as well as the annual maintenance projects that you would like to perform. For example, Lions Park, we really probably ought to lock the tennis court at this point. People still use it, but it's a very rustic experience playing tennis out there now. Last winter didn't help it, and this summer baked it again, and sadly, way, way overdue. So where did those dollars come from? I don't know. I really don't know. But the problem is getting worse and worse and worse. The bathroom roofs, most of our facilities are shot. We've had a tremendous uptick in the last couple of years in almost daily vandalism in a lot of our parks. Our police have worked really well with us this past year to get a handle on that. 18 months ago, we were to the point where our park staff was afraid to go in and do their own work because they didn't know what they were going to find. So, Sue is absolutely correct, and as far as the issue being the deferred maintenance, but how we find that mechanism is really a very difficult discussion that we need to have as a community. I'm not suggesting anything specific this evening, but as we talk, our park system is falling apart. And another bad winter is just going to accelerate a little bit. Steve does, and his staff do everything they can to squeeze another year out of a roof. How he does it, I don't know. To squeeze another year out of a surface, to squeeze another year out of not restoring a field. And yet the people keep coming and coming and coming, and we're providing a really valued and enjoyed service. So we're doing that part right, but we have stretched our system to its breaking point. Kate, you...
Is this still on? Yes. That I was kind of asking myself the same question. Clearly the people in this community love their parks. This is a very recreation-oriented population. And we did note that we do have a lot of people who are kind of aging in place and kind of an older demographic that likes living here. One of the things we talked about with the Parks and Rec Commission was a little more maybe aggressively thinking about some of these sort of out-of-the-box funding avenues like planned giving or estate kinds of things, because as we do have an older population here, people love the community. These are monies that people, if you know what planned giving is, basically they write you into their estate plan or their will or what have you, monies to be used for some specific purpose. The other opportunity is a more aggressive allowing people to buy or sponsor specific improvements at the parks. Again, playing off of or building off of the love that the people have for this community and sense of community and fondness for the park. So I think it's something that, staff working with the Recreation Commission and the other electeds within the city could really think about it doesn't necessarily have to be a tax. You know, there are other ways to raise these monies, especially where you have the passion for the resource that I think is here in this community.
Thank you, Kate. And let me add before that we would not be a forgotten thought, that is one of the reasons we are succeeding like we are, because of the gifts from all of our service organizations and community generosity. Right now is what's kept or created most of our most recent improvements and whether they be maintenance or replacements or slight additions to the programs. Tremendous support from our community, and so I would certainly, it's not my intention to not recognize all that giving that has taken place. There's just so much more that we need. Thank you.
And our dedicated staff who interfaces
Oh, absolutely.
incredibly well with our community volunteers. I mean, you do an inordinate job with what you're given. Greatly appreciate it.
Okay, is that it? Are we done commenting? Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much for that. I don't think there's any action we need to take, but our eternal gratitude and
We'll proceed.
thanks. And yes, please keep on it and keep us informed. And if anybody has any ideas that they, in the middle of the night, they wake up and go, I know what I want.
Call Steve.
I would just
Call
say
Mark.
that the opportunities do arise from time to time. Right
Yes.
now, there's a park bond measure.
Yes, there is.
Per
SB5.
capita, $215 million on the governor's desk, so maybe we can get a
If we could
small
get
portion of
$215
that.
million, that would be great.
Well, it's not all
I think
for
we
us,
have to
though. That's
share,
the problem.
but, so from time to time, opportunities do.
And this is where you do your planning and you're ready, because then if you have a good
Precisely.
plan and you've got if you're kind of
You're right.
the sort of equivalent in this particular process, if you're shovel ready, then you
Right.
can take advantage of those things as they come down the
We'll
pike.
be
So-
ready.
Plan giving.
All righty. Well, thank you very much,
Thank
and
you,
thank you
Kate.
for the presentation. and
Thank
your-
you.
See you in December.
Okay. See you. Okay. Adopt a resolution approving a fiscal year 2017-2018 budget appropriation in the amount of $60,467 in road maintenance and rehabilitation account revenue for the Country Club Drive Crack Seal Project as a sub-project of the Potholing and Crack Sealing Streets Project, and approving the fiscal year 2017-2018 proposed project list from the California Transportation Commission as presented. Mr. Yule.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I have Mr. Ferreira here with me tonight, in case I get in over my head on some of these. On April 28th, Senate Bill SB1 was passed to address basic road maintenance, rehabilitation, and critical safety needs. It is anticipated that the city will receive approximately $60,467 within the first year of the program. Prior to receiving the funds, the city must submit a list of projects proposed to be funded. 2 crack seal projects have been identified. Country Club Drive in the amount of $63,000 and $45,000 for Placerville Drive. Given the severity of the road condition on Country Club Drive, staff has determined that Country Club Drive is the highest priority and recommended for the first allotment of state funds. At this time, staff is requesting an amendment to the city's capital improvement program to include crack seal projects for both Country Club and Placerville Drive, and approve a fiscal year 2017-2018 budget appropriation in the amount of $60,467 in road maintenance and rehabilitation account revenue for the Country Club Drive crack seal project. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I would like to make an observation. The Country Club Drive, those are more than cracks. There are some of them that are like, I was walking up there not too long ago, and there were things that were like 6 or 7 inches. I mean, I actually measured them, and they were enormous. So I even though it's Country Club Drive and it's an elitist place where rich people live, I think it's really important that we make sure that we make
Get some money from
they
those
don't
rich
their
people.
Mercedeses don't fall into the holes. But no, the road really needs it, irrespective of the folks that live up there. They're wonderful. They're my neighbors. But yeah, I think this is great, and obviously any money we spend on Placerville Drive, as we've learned from our recent foray onto Placerville Drive, doing the project that was just completed, work on Placerville Drive brings back huge benefits in terms of the city people being grateful to the city for making those improvements. So I'm all for it. I don't really have any questions. It all seems very straightforward to me, but are there any questions or comments from the rest of the council?
I have a question. Not necessarily regarding this project, and I would share the mayor's concerns about the real Country Club Canyon that exists underground under all of those. You can probably, who knows, I think they're bottomless.
I think so too.
It's the center of the earth. This money, or let me rephrase, earlier this year, during our discussions, we talked about, as the Measure L funding and the projects were approved, the Measure H funding, this funding came in, we were going to try and do a patch paving program to where anytime we had to tear up a street that was in good condition, we would be able to go out at an appropriate time to get a competitively bid to have a permanent hot repair job done on, say, a sewer or water main break. Where is that funding going to come from? And what is the status of that program? The chief's back, so now I can use the word robust.
Dave, you want to help me with that one?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So your adopted Measure H, Measure L CIP program this year, budget, included $50,000 for pothole patch repair, crack seal type work coming from Measure H, Measure L. This is in addition to that, and this can be used for regular maintenance. We do have to provide the state, as stated in the staff report, a list of projects as far as the flexibility of, if there was an emergency and using that funding for other things. I'm not completely clear on how much flexibility we have that way, but if we know of a project like we've addressed here, or two projects, and the state approves, it's really just a matter of them monitoring what we're doing with that information. But Cleve, I don't know if you've have any comments.
If I can add to that, one of the difficulties we're having with this money this year is it's a pretty small amount. I mean, 60,000 sounds like a little bit, but when you're talking about street projects, it's not much. Next year, Dave helped me out. We get an additional 180,000.
181.
181. And that's when I think we will look at this harder and implement programs like that, Mark. And I think we can do it either within this or within Measure HL. The difficult part of this one is I don't know that we'll have to look at whether or not how much detail we have to list on that project form. It's pretty detailed, what the form that they required us to do.
So does the entire 60,000 have to be spent on a project, or can you add it?
No.
Just save it and put it with
You can.
next year? Or?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
That part's fairly fun.
Okay.
Yeah, we could have done a list of other projects and carry them over from year to year, but at this point, since we're just starting this, we wanted to make it kind of simple this first year. And that's why we identified these projects that we thought fit very well. But you're right, we do need to come back with that, and we can do that in this coming year.
It just, I have absolutely no question with utilizing these funds for these two projects and meeting the criteria to address the state's concerns.
Sure.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Rick, since you're here this evening,
Yeah,
good evening. We don't see him very often.
He dressed up.
We had talked earlier this year about a annual paving contract, similar to what EID does whenever they have to tear up a street. They have a contractor annually on bid that goes out and does that work as it's created. Where are we with creating our program?
I believe in 18-19 is when we'll be able to start that program. We have the boilerplate from EID, so we'll come to council and put out that work, and we'll have to identify those projects. Part of Country Club is paving, as you've identified. Those cracks are a little bigger than crack sealing, so there will be paving out of that money, and that $50,000 for the first year is coming out of that patch paving funds.
Good. I don't want to lose track of that because I'm talking about making permanent repairs to streets that are in good shape, but
Right.
the longer they sit with
Right.
cold patch, like in front of McDonald's, for example, on Broadway.
Oh,
That should be a hot repair. As it's
right.
So, Rick, we're adding the 50,000 to this to this amount that we're being asked to approve for Country Club? I'm confused, because he said we're gonna be using.
To a certain, the reason you only see, if you add the two projects together, they add up to 108,000.
Okay,
We had money already in there in Measure L for Placerville Drive project. The 60,000 is primarily for Country Club, but not completely. Those two together add up to that 108
okay,
between those two. So that's where the money comes from.
okay.
All right, Dave?
That is correct. I also like to point out that the city council established a $200,000 reserve from Measure H, Measure L, if there's an additional project we need to do or overages with some of the other existing projects that you've appropriated monies for.
Okay. I have an observation and a comment. The comment is about the spreadsheet. In the future, since lines 3 through 63 are empty, could we just like not have those on there and then make lines 1 and 2 just a little bit bigger so the fonts can be a little bit bigger? I know it's a picky thing and I shouldn't be going blind, but this is since as was revealed earlier in the evening, we're aging in place like right now. It would be and there's uplighting and God knows what else. I know it's it would be nice. That's just for the
Robust uplighting.
You see, like even in the second one here, they've actually made it a little bit bigger, although they still have lines 3 through 36 on there. Okay, that's just a little nitpicky thing. I'm sorry. That was me being snarky.
We will work on that,
yeah,
Mayor. I just
thank
want to
you.
mention that we received that form, about a week before this agenda was due and
Right.
it's due on October 16th. So we had about a month or less
Okay.
to put this together.
That's fine.
From
No,
the
I'm
state
not-
giving us.
I'm
No,
you're
I'm not.
doing a great
I'm just
job.
saying that the state
Yes.
was very late in getting
No.
information out to us.
No. Also, and I know that this is going to happen. These are going to be force account things, right? We're doing this work. City crews are going to be doing this work. Rick, his head seems to be nodding. And I know that they will do great work.
They'll stretch the dollar.
But I really want to emphasize, this has to be great work. These are the first dollars we're spending on this kind of thing in town here. And folks are going to want to see really good work, and there's nothing worse. And I know city staff will do a great job. I'm not worried about that. But sometimes when, and not to pick on the county, but you'll hear when the county forces go out and do stuff and they just slapdash it out there, and all you get is blowback from the residents out in the county about that kind of thing. And Doug set a pretty high bar on Placerville Drive. Now, I know that this is not going to be the same kind of thing, and it's never going to look like a paved road. But really emphasize that when they get out to do this work, that it has got to be spot on, because this is really something that is important, certainly to me, the rest of the council, and I know to staff as well, and to the crews. I know the crews are going to do a great job, but really reinforce that. That's just my own observation, and I'm sure the rest of the council probably agrees with me on that. Are there, would anybody, with the public, really?
Thank you.
Okay, good. We got a thumbs up from Sue. Okay,
Thanks,
good.
Sue. I'll go ahead and
Um,
move approval
move
of item
approval.
12.4.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. We're spending money, right? Okay. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Acuna,
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli,
Aye.
Mayor Clarici,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Thomas.
Aye.
Yippee. We're spending money. Okay. Item, which one did we, 12.6?
12.5 we're on now.
Oh, yeah, but we got rid of
Oh, we pulled
12.6.
12.6, yeah.
Okay. 12.5, approving a construction services contract with Joe Vicini, Inc. in the amount of $18,806 to remove and replace approximately 5,279 square feet of distressed roadway on Martin Lane, and authorizing the Director of Community Services to execute the same, approving a $25,806 budget liquidation from the Canal Street Reconstruction Project, and approving a budget appropriation from the Measure L Fund in the amount of $25,806 for the Martin Lane pavement repair project. And I think calling that distressed roadway is art, because it is
Had to
messed
come up with something.
I think, and it was very well done. Okay, Mr. Yule.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a result of heavy rains and localized flooding in the area, a section of Martin Lane has failed, threatening the integrity of the city's sewer and water lines beneath the road surface. Given the potential risk to public health and safety, staff has determined this project to be a high priority that must be addressed prior to the upcoming rainy season. Staff has also determined that due to the magnitude of the repair, it is in the city's best interest to have a third party conduct the repair work. 2 bids were received for the project: Joe Vicini Inc. in the amount of $18,860 and Doug Veerkamp General Engineering in the amount of $28,028. The scope of work includes saw cutting the roadway and replacing approximately 5,279 square feet of asphalt. The $18,860 Martin Lane pavement repair project was not included in the adopted fiscal year budget. At its meeting held on July 27th, the Measure H&L Sales Tax Committee recommended certain changes to the Measure L Fund and CIP budget, including liquidating $33,000 from the existing Canal Street reconstruction project and appropriating $33,000 for the Martin Lane pavement repair project. However, staff is recommending a reduced project budget from $33,000 to $25,806 at this time. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
So, 5,279 square feet is how many linear feet of road? About 200? 200? No, not. Well, okay, I was close. 160.
Yeah, 160 feet by 32 foot wide.
Cool. Okay, great. All right. All right, that was the only question I had. Isn't it great to have money? Yeah, it's great to have money and spend it.
Thank you
And
to
I
our
promise.
community.
That's true. It's one of the few promises that I kept.
can I make
It's
one-
like, you will have fun spending money. Okay.
Are you,
Just a quick clarification or correction on this. The Measure H.L. Committee actually recommended $43,000 for this particular project. Doesn't really affect what you're approving tonight, but
Right.
we're still
Oh,
down
okay.
to the 25, but still
Okay.
33, it should be 43.
What was the discrepancy?
I was
Which
going to say,
means-
how did you find, how'd you come up with this? How'd you?
With what, the
whittle it
43?
down? Yeah.
Well, the 43 originally, when we went to Measure HL, we were looking at, I have to tell you, some utilities possibly doing as part of this.
Oh, okay.
Due to timing and being able to get this done before the winter, it really needs to be done, we've determined that we can't take that on. That's why we're only doing a small portion of this project. And I want to also mention, by the way, and thanks to Rick and a lot of work that he's been doing with FEMA on these projects, this is a potential FEMA project, this $25,000. We won't know. Who knows when we will know for sure. It could be a year from now, but it is one that they have accepted to at least look at this time. So this money may come back to us at some point in the future. But
Cool.
we
You mean
didn't.
reimbursement?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we couldn't wait. This has to be done before the
I
rainy
agree.
season.
Otherwise, we will have.
And then will we do the additional
Well, no, what we've determined to do is put that into that'll be a major CIP that we'll look at in the future, and we've got to find a way to fund, so.
Cool. All right. Are there any?
I should mention, there is a minor service water line leak that our public works staff is gonna do. So that's an actual leak. The rest is just old water lines that we have a few of in town.
Really?
We have old water lines in
We have
town?
some old water lines?
Jeez, who knew? Okay. So, but basically the message is the road is in such bad shape and the other project is bigger than we want to deal with right in this moment. So that we can deal with this moment. So we're going to do the road. It's kind of goes against the philosophy that we've adopted, but in this case, discretion may be the better part of that.
Just so you know, the actual water and sewer line
Yeah.
repairs that will need to be done in the future are much longer than just
Just
this
this little
150
chunk. So
feet.
it's a
Right.
It'll
big,
be
it's
much
a
more
big
than
project.
that, yeah.
Okay, got it.
So, but it doesn't involve us digging up.
Oh,
The
it
street.
will.
It probably will.
Yeah. That's why we're trying to spend as least amount of money as
Makes
possible
sense.
on it. Okay. Are there any other questions?
Nope.
The public, you're on.
This is the way you said it.
Sue Rodman, member of the Measure HL Committee, and thank you for answering my questions, because my questions was, okay, I thought we had sewer and water lines in this area that were also a problem. and needed to be redone and do that whole thing. But if this is emergency so that it will hold and not completely disintegrate, then I think this is what we have to do.
Yeah. So,
Well, thank you, Sue. Okay.
with that, I move to approve the contract with Joe Facini as presented.
I'll second that. So, let's call the roll.
Councilmember Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Mayor Clarici?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Thomas?
Aye.
All righty. Okay, what do I got here?
We have another project.
I know, this is
I
like,
don't have a,
well, 12.6 was removed.
I know,
I don't have a
12.7.
12.7.
12.7.
I'm sure it's there. 12.7. Approving a force account sewer trunk line repair project as part of the Measure L. Is that right, Measure L?
I'll just, it's all right. Doesn't-
HL.
HL, that's what I was thinking, because we do not want to commingle our funds. The Measure HLI and I reduction project for an estimated cost of $12,000, and authorize the Community Services Director to negotiate and execute an emergency repair contract, if necessary, up to an additional amount of $12,000 for the said project. Do you actually capitalize said in that case? Or is that should just, I don't think so. Otherwise, it would be the said project. Mr. Yule.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I used large void to describe this one. I guess we could have used that on the last one also. On August 16th, staff became aware of a large void in a 20-inch sewer main line caused by a dislodged boulder. The damage is located along Hangtown Creek between Placerville Drive and the city's water reclamation, I can never say that word, facility. Pending approval from the Department of Fish and Wildlife, city staff intends to repair the damaged sewer line utilizing city personnel. The estimated cost for materials and supplies is $12,000. The scope of work includes diverting the creek flow, removing the dislodged boulder, repairing the pipe, and restoring the creek bed back to its original condition. Because of the full extent of the damage cannot be determined until the boulder is removed, staff is requesting authorization to negotiate a contract with a local contractor to be on standby to assist with this repair if necessary. Staff estimates that an additional $12,000 could be spent if a contractor is asked to assist with the repair, bringing the total project cost to $24,000. The City Council adopted fiscal year 2017-18 CIP budget, which appropriated $100,000 for inflow and infiltration reduction projects. The sewer trunk line repair project will be accounted for as part of that I&I reduction project. The requested funding of $24,000 is well within the projected budget. This repair has been identified for storm-related reimbursement through the city's FEMA application. Assuming the city receives reimbursement of the funds, it'll be refunded back to Measure L.
Cool.
And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Yule and his large void?
I do. I want to talk about the void.
Void.
Steve, how far along are you with getting the permit from Fish and Game?
We have it, and our guys are out there clearing the brush out of the way to get to the repair. They were
That's
out there
awesome.
today. So,
Great.
yeah, all of our paperwork's in order, and pending tonight's decision, that's our number one priority.
Is this a steel pipe that's got the void in it?
It's time to let Rick chime in.
Mr. Rick.
It's a concrete cement line pipe.
Oh, thank you, sir.
All right.
Congratulations on the permit.
Any other questions? Okay,
Did you ask the public?
I'm just about ready to.
Oh,
Would the public care to speak about this? Okay.
So the boulder is still in the pipe then?
You know, you ought to sit in that one chair right there. It'd be a lot.
Yeah, when you have a boulder poking a hole in your main sewer trunk line.
That's right.
I would say that is a priority to get done, so I'm amazed. But boulders do come down off the off the mountain and off the hillside, and you can ask EID, who lost a whole bunch of their flume systems this
Oh, yes,
last winter
on a
too.
regular
So
basis.
perhaps we should count our blessings that we only have one boulder to move. So.
Thank you, Sue. Okay,
I'll move approval of the item.
Second?
we have a motion and a second. Would you like to call the roll, please?
Councilmember Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Mayor Clarici?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Thomas?
Aye.
Great. Oh,
Good luck with the repair.
yes. I do have a question actually about the airport road. When, this is probably in the staff report and I just missed it, but when will this project be done? The airport road and the Placerville Drive crack sealing, filling, thinging?
Rick, that's a spring project, right?
Oh, okay, so it's not going to be till,
What? We just
Or is
gave
it
them
this
money.
fall? Fall? Okay.
okay.
It is this fall.
Yes, sir.
They're going to try and get to it, yeah.
Yeah, crack sealing we'll do during the winter.
Okay.
That's the best time to do it.
Oh, very good. I just learned something new. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay. Finally, 12.8, approve a change in the start time of the October 10th, 2017 council meeting to 6:30 PM, regular meeting with closed session occurring at the end of the meeting. Mr. Morris.
Mayor and council, this is pretty self-explanatory. There's an event on October 10th, the night of our council meeting, that a couple of council members have expressed interest in an event for Assembly Member Frank Bigelow. And therefore, these Councilmember Acuna and Thomas requested that we consider changing the start time so that they could attend this event. So staff put this on the agenda at that request so that this needed to be considered before the next meeting. So that's the reason for this.
We thought it was important to support our assembly member because he's going to be up here in the Placerville area that night. And it's an unfortunate, timing of that, but if we can just roll it back a half hour, that will give us the opportunity to say hello and
Just say hello and
Exactly.
goodbye.
All right. Hello, goodbye.
so.
Thank you.
We're late, yes. Anyway, okay. I have
If
to
that works for our
ask-
staff.
Public is left.
I know, but I have, no one's going to comment. Okay. The motion to do
So
this?
moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
You did this very, most efficiently, Mr. Mayor.
I guess
All of our
so. It's
12
only
points.
8 o'clock. Yeah.
There was a lot of
Count-
stuff there.
Council reports from other agency
I
meetings.
don't think we have any, do we?
Oh, let me go through the list.
Pardon me, Mr. Mayor.
El Dorado County Transit Authority. No.
Well, there was a meeting because I missed transit and.
That was last
but that
week.
we
No, no,
We
that
already
was-
went through that last
We
week.
already talked about that one
Yeah.
before.
Okay, all right.
And obviously the same for the Transportation
Yeah.
Commission, the LAFCO.
We
the
meet
most
tomorrow night.
exciting
See?
group on the
Yeah.
planet.
Visitors arrival.
SACOG. No.
Okay. No 2x2.
No 2x2s, okay.
No.
Request for future agenda items. Request for future agenda items requires a majority concurrence of the council. Recommendation from Councilmember Acuna to begin staff and council discussions to create a full-time code enforcement position in the Development Services Department. Mr. Acuna.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we heard this evening, one of the issues that we face is the enforcement of our codes. We have a whole number of community standards, and currently, we really do not have a full-time position that deals with code enforcement. And I have been investigating our situation for about the last 90 days. I've met with Cleve on it. I've met with various members of the community. Vice Mayor Thomas was nice enough to spend some time with me a couple weeks ago to review where we're at with it. And I'm to the point where it's obvious that the effects, by not having a code enforcement program, the effects to it are throughout the community. And it's a matter of health and safety, it's a matter of property value, it's a matter of community standards. The impacts flow over onto all of our various departments. During National Night Out, for example, I was shown a spot that I would have never believed behind a very nicely redone business on Broadway. And any given week, our officers respond a couple of times a week to homeless camping, a very secluded spot, but it affects probably 3 or 4 properties, residential and commercial. That's one example. We heard this evening concerns regarding sign enforcement, good signs, bad signs. You can look at some of our abandoned properties, if you will. The Chuck's property has been for sale for quite a while now. There's still an old sign out in front with a couple of steel poles that probably could be gone if we had a person that was dedicated to work on these types of issues. Earlier this summer, the vacant residential parcels that are subject, some have maps, some have pending maps, Cottonwood, Lumsden Ranch, Quartz Mountain, have all had issues this summer with illegal camping, illegal campfires. Again, we do not have a staff person that can be in contact with those people, has the time to do the follow-through, because those are all owned by out-of-town folks. But yet the impact to the neighborhoods is significant. Again, the police have to respond, the fire district has to respond. Millions of dollars of property value at risk because these large out-of-town owners are not held to our standards. We have them there. We have city ordinances that say you will not create these types of hazards. So again, I mean, I can go on and on and on, but I won't.
You don't have
I don't have to. So I would appreciate your support in directing or starting this process and seeing what our options are. In the discussions I've had with Cleve, he talked about the fact that we actually need to figure out what will this program look like. Right. What will that individual's work duties be? I envision it being someone that reports to the second floor. We may find out that that's not correct. We may find out that that's just the place where it should go. Obviously, there's a funding issue, but I can get into that. That's difficult. But I'm sure that if we started to track it, we would start to find out that by not having an enforcement program, our police, our planning director, our public works director, our city manager are constantly reacting.
Right.
And it's a drop everything, deal with it this week, but no pun intended, but put the fire out and move on to the next one. So
Okay.
I would appreciate your support.
I can support that.
I certainly can too.
Didn't we at one point, and maybe it just got scotched, that there was going to be like a half-time person that would be in police and in planning that was going to do code enforcement. Whatever happened to that?
Isn't it Carol?
That's Carol Nolan. We have that
so we
position.
have a half-time person.
She
and you're
works
saying-
primarily just in police right now, but does assist if need be on things in planning.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
So I do think we should look at the full-time, but it also could very well be that this other person, it just turns out now that their duties are on the police side mostly, and even if you would compromise their work for the police department.
We haven't got the funding for it.
Well, we would really what this I should have put in here is not create a full-time position as much as create a better code enforcement program.
Okay,
That's
got it.
really what we need.
Okay.
And how we do that with
How we do
staffing
that,
is
okay.
something that we
That
need
would
to
be a
do.
mechanic.
Oh,
It
okay.
could be a combination.
Our recommendation is the staff wrestle with this issue, look at where it would be most helpful to our departments and to our community, and then to come back with a plan
Right.
for our review.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have another one.
Go ahead.
Thank you. This is one Cleve doesn't know about. It's exciting. Well, yeah, he does know about it. We have talked about it in the last 3 or 4 months. We've had issues that have come up. We've talked about asking staff or agencies for quarterly reports.
Yes.
For example, animal control gentleman was here and did a very nice presentation. He offered quarterly reports.
Right.
And I would like, and we had Rebecca, our city engineer, at our last meeting. She gave us a report on a number of projects.
Right.
And talking with Councilmember Thomas, we talked about the value that we could get by having these things come out, making it a directive. We've all talked about it in my 11 years on the council. There's been numerous times where we said, well, we should have quarterly reports, monthly reports, every 2 months, whatever. And something always interrupts the process. Again, something will occur that will distract us. We recently talked about having a report from the parking district so that we know financially every 3 months how is our plan working. Do we need to engage that? Are we meeting our goals and our long, deferred maintenance, et cetera, et cetera? Same thing with animal control. I would suggest it would be wonderful if we could get that type of report from our police department, planning department, public works.
Yes.
And I asked Cleve, do we do it as a resolution so that it becomes the mandate of the council for future council? Because, John, if you look at a lot of cities,
Yeah.
A lot of cities that not a lot bigger than us, they get monthly reports from their fire department,
Sure,
their
sure.
police department, their planning. They don't have to be extensive, but the numbers are there, and you see the trends of.
I think the model that I would say would work, and it would have to be different for different departments and different uses, is the report we get from the Transportation Commission staff
Oh, that's
on
excellent.
the projects. It has a
Excellent.
map, it shows you where things are, it gives you status reports, it tells you projects that have just been completed, it rolls them through. And once, the work is in the preparation initially, then once you're in it, then you're just updating it. And I think that's what we need to really
Yeah.
think about, those, to make sure that we don't, yes, it would be great to get more timely updates on a variety of fronts. On the other hand, our staff are very busy.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to, I want to be very mindful of that. And I think there's a way to split.
We
just
are
to-
mindful of it, but it
Yeah.
would really help us. I mean, we're kind of like the governing body, and people
we are
keep
giving-
asking us with questions,
Yeah.
and we can't answer them, and it makes us look
No.
foolish, and, and then we have to call somebody,
Right.
and so maybe this
But
would save
then,
a lot of.
okay,
know.
then I would agree with that, and I like that idea.
And again, this is my request for a future agenda
Yeah,
item.
yeah.
So.
No, and I agree with it. I support it entirely. But it also means for us to give staff clear guidance on what we want to see, with the kinds of information that would be valuable to us. For example, and God bless them, I love the fire department, but I really don't ever want to see that data dump they do every 3 or 4. It's just, honestly, besides the fact that you look at it and go, whoa, they do a lot of things every day, I already know that.
Right,
You come downtown, you watch them go in and out of the fire station, I know they're doing something.
Right.
And to get a bunch of lines on the thing without any other thing except it started on this day and it ends on this day.
So
Is
again,
of
that
no
would
value.
be part of my request,
Yeah.
for future.
But that's up to us to
What
sit there
the-
and say, these are what's important.
These
But
are-
I agree
Yeah,
with you.
absolutely.
But with the very clear understanding that this is not meant to be an onerous task to our staff who is already
Exactly.
overburdened. Yeah. Well, I think we need to be very, very mindful of that.
Slightly
Because
onerous,
they can take
otherwise we make it too easy.
an inordinate amount of time to create
Right.
not only staff reports for city council meetings, but then these reports,
Right.
So
No.
do hear us clearly on that. This is not meant to be
Right.
We understand,
a huge
and
task.
I will say in my discussion with Mark, I said, I do think it's a good idea. It is valuable information. And we will be discussing that at our staff
Right.
meeting tomorrow and figure out how we present this to the council.
And maybe there's a format across all the departments that works. Now, some may have different guidelines, but that, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time, and,
So
so
will
we're
Cleve,
completely
for instance-
flexible. on-
But like with Cleve, you, we are naturally, you're not going to get everything that you get, but you get reports. You ask what's coming up or what they're doing or something like that, so,
Yeah.
like I say, what Wendy said too, and John, I don't want to hear all the little details. I just, it's just like,
No,
Big
we
picture.
understand, yeah,
Big
it's
picture.
not, it
And
can be done.
like a
so.
report from the city attorney. That could, maybe annually. Seriously, Park and Rec's report would look different than the police department's report. Dave Warren, I don't know what you'd report on.
Everything.
Because you've got your fingers in
Everything.
everything.
yeah, we
Just
don't need
the
all those
money.
numbers.
Maybe you can just put your name on the bottom of all of them, but,
Yes.
yeah, it has to be at from 20,000 feet based on what that work group is.
So I think
producing.
there would be two prongs to this attack. One is obviously Cleve talking to staff and finding out what's there. I would suggest that staff would then say, listen, this is the kind of information that is available to us on a daily basis. It's pretty easily aggregated, and that could fairly easily be put into a report that would be of some value. And then it's up to us to sit there and then say, these are the things that I think would be valuable. And so, for example, the road things and all the Measure L and H stuff. I think a map, like the Transportation Commission gives us, a map and the project locations
This is the
with a
yeah.
key and then a list of things and the status of each.
Yep.
And I think that would be fantastic. Yeah, and I think that would be fantastic.
But for that matter, though, I liked Rebecca's list last
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah.
I was perfectly
that was-
fine with
that was
that,
good.
too, so.
A little larger font.
Speaking
Okay.
of that, remember that did come up, though, that we want to simplify that to have something available
For
for
the
the public. And
public
we
as
are
well.
working
To put on the
on
website,
that.
yes,
Honestly,
definitely.
Yes, for the
Anything
public,
that would
yeah.
be good for us is probably something that with almost no addition.
Really, even a
could
one-page,
go out
Yes.
to the-
one-sided report,
it's-
that even could be
What's going on over there?
disseminated.
Okay, I think we're losing
They're
that
excited
side of the
about
room over there entirely. Okay.
Thank you.
Upcoming items.
I have,
Oh,
I would like to,
oh.
I would like to ask Cleve if we have yet received any reports on the storm-related, of what we've billed them for, or
Oh,
if we've
FEMA.
gotten any, the storm damages and what we were able to recoup, if anything, or?
But we haven't recouped anything yet. We've filed reports. I think Rick has another meeting tomorrow or Thursday, Rick, with FEMA? Thursday morning with FEMA. And there'll be, hopefully this is the last review of that, and it'll then be shipped off to FEMA, and then we wait for them.
Okay.
It's a
Okay, I
pretty
just wondered
extensive
where-
review process that they have to go through before we will hear anything.
Okay,
We
I
haven't
just
recouped
wondered-
any
I
money
just
yet.
wondered where we were.
Sure.
Is that the trend throughout with all the communities in California from the?
It takes time.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you imagine the poor folks in Texas and Florida and Puerto Rico?
I don't know.
And,
I can.
and we didn't lose our homes.
That's why you don't
Wow.
live. That's why you don't live anywhere flat. Okay.
That's why we're
Um,
staying here.
Items tentatively scheduled for the next
Mayor?
regularly
Mayor?
scheduled city council meeting.
Mayor?
What?
I have, just quickly,
Oh,
can
I'm
I-
sorry.
can I
I
do
went
one?
right by your thing. Okay.
Can I
go.
do one quick staff
You
city
go
manager
right
report?
ahead.
I'm going to report on roosters for you. This was requested at the last meeting. I got an email. I've been talking to Henry Brzezinski from the county over Animal Control. Unfortunately, they still have not been successful. But I wanted to let you know that looking since August 2nd through September 25th, more or less, it looks like they've had about 14 instances where they've attempted to capture roosters. They've been unsuccessful. It looks like they've talked to some people about better ways to do it, and it looks like they've got some ideas that they said within the month they hope to have them captured.
Within the month, okay.
That's-
All right, so we'll stay tuned till
I'm
next
telling
month.
you.
And he will keep us informed.
Thank you, Cleve.
$10 a
Thank
head.
you.
$10 a rooster. $10 a rooster.
Well, we
All
have
the
a-
roosters are gone.
We have
I'm
a
telling
fishing
you.
derby there once a year.
You know-
What's wrong with a rooster derby?
Rooster derby.
Sorry, Steve.
Roosters. The chickens are about as stupid of an animal as you can find. I don't.
Well, obviously, they're pretty smart. They can't,
Well, they're
they've been trying to
smarter
catch
than-
it.
They're smarter than animals. Well, maybe, but okay, that's not the point. We're going to do the next month's meeting, which will be at 6:30, not 6 o'clock. ADU zoning ordinance revisions, city cannabis resolution extension, Measure J report, Title VI FTA program, zinc study, corporation yard repairs. What's the zinc study?
Yeah, what's the zinc
besides?
study?
Is it about zinc?
This might take a while. but
No,
if
then
you
I
wanna
don't
hear
want to
it-
know. We'll just hear it on the tape. I don't care. I'll talk to Pierre offline. Zinc.
Oh, it's at
study.
the treatment plant?
Oh, it's a treatment plant. There you
Oh,
go.
okay.
That's all I need to know. All right.
I'll give you a short answer. Do you want the short answer? We were out of compliance, and we came up with a method of adding chemicals, et cetera, that has now been successful. So we're in compliance, but it's very expensive. Excuse me. If we can go through this study that we're going to recommend, and it's successful in showing that it is not impacting the fish and et cetera in the creek, we can do away with that chemical additions we're doing for zinc. It save us about $65,000 a year, as I recall what the number was. So
That's correct, yes.
that's the short answer. Pierre would do much better,
That's okay.
but it's a long report.
Stay
Is that
tuned.
correct?
Thank you very much for that. Okay. I think we're done. Go home. Have a nice evening, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. 2 weeks.